Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality A Bridge to Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me is Dr. Anahy Fonseca. Hi, Anahy. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Hello, Marcia, and hello, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Anahy, I am fascinated with some concepts around fear, and would love to have you and I have a few minutes to talk about it and actually explore it further, right? I know that the subject is broad, it's complex, it is even an underlying basic but multifaceted emotion. But I wanted to ask your permission that before we talk about fear specifically, can I talk about a movie that is considered today far scarier than other R-rated horror movies? So, at the time when it was first released, parents had been warned to be cautious about allowing children under high school age to watch it and should be prepared to talk to their kids about the movie because even teens may find it upsetting. And I just find it interesting because even though it's been about 25 years since it was first released, and actually a subject of a comedic reference and spoofs, right? Watching The Sixth Sense today is just as impactful as it was in 1999. And I would say, right, that the timelessness of this movie is perhaps because it deals with universal themes about life and death. And in the movie, I'm going to maybe give a little bit of the plot so we can talk about it, fear in relation to this movie. Is that okay?
Yeah, great. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the movie, there's this 9-year-old little boy, right, Cole, and he's a medium. Not only he's a medium, but is quite isolated. He's bullied by peers right at school, and you could say, is it because he's a psychic? No, it's really because he's unable to fit in, right? And people know that he can see things. There's something odd about him, but most importantly, he's picked on because of inherently there's something different about him. And if you can think about it, we can extrapolate that idea to maybe anyone who has had a really difficult, for example, adolescence or a difficult life as a child, that it's hard to fit in. But in any case, the movie, in its darkest moments, it shows us how this boy Cole represents all of us, the misfits, all the minorities, or even individuals who are in the process of surviving abuse, right? His mother is amazing, but there is some sort of abuse that you can see, but it's mostly physical and mental, right? What are we talking about? Well, he's being, quote unquote, disturbed by spirits. And his sixth sense, his mediumship, is allowing him or exposing him to domestic violence. So she sees a woman in the kitchen, right, that was abused by her husband previously. He also saw in the house that he lives in a boy that was a victim of um, playing with a gun of a father, for all sorts of scenes that makes him shrink, and he's afraid, right? So he is a child, he's a victim of abuse, and he really is isolated. And the film, if you go at it from a more of a psychological view, you see that he is the only way that he can survive all of this is to be able to be a witness of the trauma, right? But to somehow start to interact with those who survived, right? So Dr. Malcolm, who is this this child psychologist, treats him, and of course, in the course of treatment, he understands that there's something very important for Cole to do, which is in order to be able to confront all that life that at some point the child psychologist says that he's a schizophrenic, that he's unable to treat him, and there's all sorts of issues with paranoia, etc., that in the end he knows that he must, right? He must confront and control and have a sense of ownership of his life by being healed by the child psychologist, but also being able to offer help to those who are suffering. So it's the dichotomy of he's seen in the case spirits that went through some really gruesome death, right? But he's able to talk to them no longer with fear, but as an instrument to support those people. I don't know. Did you see this movie? And can you talk a little bit because I watched it twice back in the day, and I was like I mentioned quite disturbed, and I'm spiritist. I know about the issues around mediumship as well as the survival of a spirit through death, right? There is no death. There's only death of that physical body. And in looking at it again recently, I just thought, can we talk about the fear that this little boy is going through that diminishes him to a point that he's just shrinking and dealing with much more than he should be able to deal with?
Wow, I love Sixth Sense. I have many times.
Yeah, yeah,
I love Bruce Willis in the
yes,
character of Malcolm, and the little boy is just great, the actor,
yeah,
They are really, and well, I think all the plot and all the issues that the movie is proposing us to think about, it's
hmm,
just, and it's so important to talk about that, Marcia, because as you said, you are a spiritist, and you understand, you have the knowledge
yeah,
that we don't die. Actually, the spirit is evolving and is immortal, and we are here learning in this wonderful experience of learning, this
hmm,
opportunity. But so why do we have all this fear of death, for instance, of
yeah,
ghosts, right? Lots of movies, scary movies, but actually this is not a terror, movie about
yeah,
terror,
hmm,
or really, okay, plays with our emotions and with our fears, but it's actually taking us someplace. So I would love, first of all, to tell you guys, you and everybody else that is listening to us, a sentence of Joanna de Angelis, and look what she
hmm,
says, and look how important is that is bringing us the plot of the movie, the images of the movie, so that we can have an example that is actually very important for these days that we are living. And we can
hmm.
talk about that. But first of all, a sentence by Joanna, okay?
Okay,
Fear is a universal experience
yes,
that touches every individual at some point in life, right? It can be a protective mechanism warning us of danger. We know
Yeah.
that, right? We need
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
feeling of fear, because otherwise, in some moments, we are not going to, pay attention to the car that is coming when we are crossing the road and things like that. But it can also become a debilitating force that paralyzes personal growth and spiritual evolution.
Yes.
Maybe Joanna was inspiring the director.
I,
And
I wondered about that.
yes, yes, because it's, it fits so well.
Yeah.
So let's go to the first part of what Joanna says, that it can be a protective mechanism,
Yeah.
warning us of danger. How do we medical doctors and health professionals know that, and people in general?
Hmm.
Because we have reactions that are started in our brains,
Hmm.
right? The spirit is using the brain and the body, of course, to live this experience and to connect to the outside world, the external world, but also the learning process that is happening inside of in our internal world, inside of ourselves, in our souls. Okay, so connecting to this protective mechanism that Joanna says that it's warning us of danger. So the fear reaction, actually, Martha and everybody else, starts in the brain. Like we perceive
So
something.
it's an organic, right?
Yeah.
It's part of our physical reaction to something out there.
Yes, and it's very ancient. Okay, I don't
Hmm.
want to put Jung and, and everything else in the right in the beginning, but we know that the collective unconscious that Jung said is our spiritual and psychological inheritance, right? So that
Hmm.
the archetypes, so the experiences that we all live uh, are like recorded in the collective unconscious. So we
Hmm.
share as humanity this learning in these wonderful possibilities, but we share all our experiences. I think, oh, I'm an individual, I'm living and I'm suffering and I'm doing everything by myself. No, you are not, according to Jung, because we
But
all share.
yeah, I'm
Yes.
just thinking out loud here. I hate horror movies. If somebody says, "Hey, let's go to the movie theater," and I'm like, "Well, let me see what is the title. Let me see the plot." Right. So I read in advance because I absolutely despise horror movies. And I often wondered, why is it that we have such an appetite for that type of movies, right? Why are we, and there are people that are almost addicted to watching those terrible scenes and that plague with our fears, our inner fears that are mostly universal, as you mentioned. And I guess when you said that from a Jungian perspective, that is part of our collective unconscious, I'm starting to think now that perhaps it is a way for humanity to confront with those fears that otherwise is repressed.
Yes, great, Marcia. Yes, exactly that. Because as Joanna says, we have to confront our fears, right?
Hmm.
It's a learning process. And
Hmm.
our brain, that it's not our quantic
Yeah,
computer, whatever,
yeah.
in the body, right? So it knows that because it's in our biology, that all these instruments that we have, our body, it's
Hmm.
a fantastic, it's a great instrument to learning process in this world, and
Hmm.
to connect the different dimensions, the material and the spiritual dimension. Isn't that great? Right, so we know that in our brains, okay, we have the fear reaction starts and spreads through the body to make adjustments, right, for the best defense.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we remember, oh, in that defense, we say the flight reaction, fight or flight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reaction. So it's a very old impulse because, of course, when we were on the open in Africa, our
Yes.
motherland,
Yes.
right? We would have lions, for instance, and
Yeah.
other predators, right?
Yeah.
So how would we know that we have to run if we didn't learn that which animals would, possibly kill us if we didn't do anything? So I think it's very important that we have all this information, but we are evolving and our consciousness is evolving. So we have to face our fears because something or some things that were like threatening for us in the past are not anymore. That's the tricky part,
Yeah.
right? We are not, on the open in the savannah with lions, but there are probably people that want us to think that we, are being threatened. And also, our environment and our culture is not very healthy at the moment. I think because also of this manipulation, let's say, not.
I, yeah, I
Go
was going to
ahead.
say, no, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say the words that came to my mind, and again, in the context of Western society, right? That is a society uh, based on capitalism and individualism and consumerism, right? All of it feed each other with the alienating power that pushes us to do something to feel safe, right? And that
Yes.
safety can be interpreted crazy that is, but safety may be workaholic behaviors to safeguard a place in your company of employment, or it could be the addiction to surgeries to stay youthful and guarantee visibility. And there's so many really um, behaviors that make no sense. Those behaviors make no sense, but in the end it's how we cope with our fears in a society that drives us to hold on to those fears because it is monetized, right?
Yes, yes, beautifully said. Because you see, Marcia, for instance, we have the part of the brain, okay, the region of the brain that is responsible for initiating the process of sending the message to the body. There are lots of things that have to be done
Hmm.
for us to fight or flight. Is the
Correct.
what we call the amygdala. Okay,
Hmm.
people can Google it and go further if they want,
Yeah.
but it's the amygdala. Okay, and it's in the temporal lobe of the brain. And look at that. The amygdala is dedicated to detecting the emotional part of the stimuli. Okay, we are in a
Hmm.
situation and we have to detect the emotional part of the stimuli. So how much something stands out to us. And for instance, I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
The amygdala activates whenever we see in a human face, for instance, an emotion, but the reaction is more it's more pronounced with anger and fear. That's why I was connecting to today. It's
Hmm.
very, very up to date, this information that I think
Hmm.
people need to realize.
Hmm.
Because we were talking about predators on the open,
Hmm.
but as you said, in this world of ours, that in the time, these times that we are living, what is a threat? Okay, that we, for instance, when you see in newspapers, TV, or whatever, people showing in their faces a lot of anger, a lot of, for instance, and fear. okay, in something collective, for instance. And even if you are, okay, I'm going there to say that I'm against this or that, but I have a responsibility to what I'm, I'm sending, the message that I'm sending, because there are going to be lots of people looking at me.
Mhm.
So what happens is, and imagine if we are together, the riots and things all over the world. So I look at that, and the world seems very angry, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And automatically my amygdala, because I'm in a body, my spirit is here, so I have a soul that it's using the brain to understand where I am and the external world, right? So what happens is that my amygdala is going to say, you have to fly,
yeah, yeah.
because it's going to provoke the reaction. It's a trigger for a fear reaction, right?
Mhm.
So lots of things happen. We have the hormones of the, like cortisol, hormones of stress, and the stimulation of sympathetic nervous systems that we know that make a lot of changes. For instance, the heart, the blood pressure increase, the heart rate increases, right? We have a breathing that accelerates, and a lot of things happening to send more blood to the muscles and to the brain to, have some strategics to run. So
Mhm.
we could say that things in from this point of view, the emotional and the function of the body also, right? The biological point of view and the emotional, we are being stimulated to live in fear, Marcia, exactly
Yeah,
as you said.
yeah.
So our brains are always like interpreting things all over the news and whatever, and people talking and friends getting together. It's all about fear. So what happens is that, okay, your body is, no wonder we have depression and anxiety rising like, mad, the
Yeah,
rates. And we have a lot of like burnout disease all over the globe, and
yeah.
people can't sleep well because, of course, the message is like, if you are awake, is like 24 hours the day you
Ex
are awake. Live in
exactly.
fear because, you are being
Just
threatened.
yeah, just think about it. In our society, we have never been as able to be safe than now, right? What do we talk about? We have, let's say, there's a police. Um, there are alarms, right? Alarm systems. We have all sorts of cameras that detect motion and video tapes, whatever the source of the motion. We have all of that in to help us protect ourselves. Yet we've never been this afraid ever.
Yeah,
And I remember, and this dates me a little bit, but when I first moved from Brazil to the US and I came in, I could actually understand that there is this enormous weight that fear is placed, especially in Brazil. Why? Well, because of course, a society with a very, very instance of inequality, socioeconomic inequality that leads to uh, people stealing, and because of it, I remember visiting family not just the other, not so long ago, and here I am. We do everything with our cell phones. Just it doesn't matter. We leave it at our table, and I go to see my family. Like, no, you have to actually have a second cell phone, a really cheap one, because if somebody attacks you, they're going to take the bad one and you keep the old. And like, oh, this is too much, right? regardless of that, I still remember knowing many, many decades ago, actually, how at that time it was almost, I could touch almost fear. It was part of everyday life. And as I moved to a different country, I just said, you know what? I'm not going to be afraid anymore. And Anahy, I left my home that I lived always unlocked because I said, there's no crime here. Now, this is quite naive of me, right?
Yes.
But for years and years and years, I left my home unlocked. I was never afraid. And it's quite liberating when you start to see there is a gap between the reality of a dangerous situation and the reality that is created by the, all this manipulative, as you mentioned, type of society that monetizes and somehow pushes you to live with fears and paranoias and anxiety, etc., etc.
Yeah, but see, Marsha, what we are doing right now with
Mm,
everybody else that is listening to us is the
mm.
path that Joanna de Angelis says to
Yes.
confront and go
Yeah.
deeper in the not only the understanding, but the healing of our fears, right? And going ahead in our personal and spiritual growth. It's
Yeah.
not something that we should oversee, like, oh, there's no problem with that. Let's, just I'm safe here or I'm not safe, but it's
Uh,
okay. I live in. No, no. We are talking about personal growth and
yes.
spiritual evolution. It's all about that because that's exactly what we have planned to do, of course,
Hmm.
all of us that are thinking about these issues and really trying to understand deeper the world that we are living in and
Yeah.
evolve. Okay, but what I think it's important, okay, we have talked about the amygdala, and I'm remembering some scenes of the movie that you said, and
Yeah.
poor Paul, he was in a state of fear and with
All
his
the time.
amygdala, I think it
Yeah.
was all the time receiving this information because the adults around him couldn't understand exactly what was going on. Even his mother wouldn't believe him, if you
Hmm.
remember. She
Yeah.
was very upset when he said something about the grandmother who had already died and was talking to, it would come to talk to him. It was not only like spirits that were not very
Yeah.
very okay with and
Uh-huh.
understanding their situation, but the grandmother who loved him very much was there to help, and the mother would be afraid of her own mother. Can you believe
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even the possibility that it, okay, that's true, let's see, it's a little boy, let's see what he's talking about. So there was a pendant or
It
necklace
was
this.
a bumblebee pendant.
Oh
And
yeah, that's
yes,
it.
that the
That's it.
grandma, it was hers, the grandma's, and the mother would find that pendant in the boy's room. So of course, there's only two people living in the house, and he says, "I didn't." I'm like, "I don't believe you because there's nobody else here."
It was grandma's.
It was grandma.
That asked him. Well, so what is important, if we go back to the brain, okay, to the
Yeah.
material part of this discussion,
Yes.
is that there is a part of the brain that is called the hippocampus, okay, and it's closely connected with the amygdala. And the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, they help the brain interpret the perceived threat. Okay, so
Okay.
we have a part that perceives the amygdala and is going to send all the different reactions in the brain. So to decide if I have to fight or flight. But we have processing the information, the hippocampus, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and the prefrontal cortex, that it's very important to interpret. But we need time. We need a little time. We have to deal with the situation. Do we have time nowadays? It's a flood of information, and
Yes.
everybody in the mobile, as you shown. Okay,
Yeah.
oh, here I am, my mind is here, and all this stuff. So they are the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. They are involved in a higher level processing context, which helps a person decide if the threat is real. Look at that. So if I'm in denial, like Cole's mother, for
Yeah.
instance, if I'm and a lot of us, if we are looking at the news or whatever, and our amygdala is functioning, but it's not having time, okay, to
To
send the
process. Yeah.
information and to
Mm-hmm.
process the information
Mm-hmm.
through hippocampus and other parts of the cortex. What's going to happen? We are not going to believe, we will be in denial. We are not going to believe someone that is telling us something that it's going to make us think, at least think of that, like Cole's mother, right? And the thing is that we never have the pathway to dampen the amygdala, to decrease the functioning. So we stay organically, biologically in a state, perpetual state of fear, that a
Yes.
lot of people, and then we have all the psychiatry and psychological diagnoses, you know, we have anxiety, we have different types of anxiety, we have panic attacks, we have depression, this, and so on and so forth. Okay. So what Joanna says, that I think it's great, and then I quote Joanna: fear, while natural, often becomes a pervasive force that
Mm-hmm.
hinders the pursuit of self knowledge and spiritual growth. So it can paralyze personal growth and spiritual evolution. Joanna is talking to us about that. So I think it's very, very important, Marsha and everybody else, that we need to use our body, that it's so great, so perfect, has all the, and I told you a little tiny bit of
Yeah.
the reactions and biology involved, but we are the instrument of our, we have this instrument, and
Mm-hmm.
there's all this capacity to grow, right, and to
Uh-huh.
evolve spiritually. But we need to use what was given to us by God, by the creator, right? And we have to use it and not get caught in this daily kind of unbalanced
Yeah.
collective that we are living in, right? And also, I don't know if you want to comment, because I wanted very much to talk about Bruce Willis' character
Yeah, let's
Malcolm.
do it. Let's do it because I also have thought about it, but let's hear from you your analysis of Malcolm, the child psychologist.
Okay. I love Malcolm, by the way, because he thinks he's kind of have a self-importance. He's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
a narcissist, not nothing like that, but
Yeah.
he's pretty much in his persona. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
great. You know,
Yes.
the persona of the psychologist. Okay, I know
Yes.
everything that it's going on
I
with
know it all.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But that's fantastic. I think it's, and I quote Joanna again, because she says that in the root of many of our fears, and I think this is very important for
Mm-hmm.
our discussion, that it's bridging psychology and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to focus in this perspective,
Sure.
because Joanna says that the inheritance of guilt in the human unconscious
Yeah.
accounts for countless imbalances that unfold from it.
Yeah.
Okay? Errors and crimes committed during the initial phase of conquest of reason and discernment. Of course, she's talking about past lives, right?
In our path, historically speaking, as a human race, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
everything stays there in the collective unconscious. We should remember that.
Hmm.
In the face of the awakening of consciousness, of course, we would make a lot of, we have made lots of mistakes and even crimes, okay? In our spiritual
Hmm.
past, we were learning. So, but this kind of guilt, okay, that we know that they stay with us if we don't work them. So we
Hmm.
are here also to work through all these guilts and like uh, unaware to being
Hmm.
unaware of who we truly are, right? So, but she says that reappear in the personality
Mm.
with embarrassing imposition, not infrequently, she says, causing feelings of guilt unconsciously, of course, unconscious feelings of guilt, which leads to fear. So this is very different from what Freud says, Jung says, even Jung, okay, he
Hmm.
went further, deeper actually than Freud, because
Hmm.
Freud would say that our fears are based in our denial of inner conflict, psychological and unconscious.
And
Pers-
neurosis, right? A lot of
yeah,
what he talked about was the neurotic behavior that we all have.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because then the ego denies and represses, and then of course the fear of what is in the unconscious
Hmm.
will be a great part of our neurotic patterns. Okay, and
Yeah.
okay, Jung went deeper, talking about the collective unconscious. It's more holistic, his view,
Hmm.
and the confrontation with our shadow aspects. Okay, he
Hmm.
goes there, but he never said what Joanna says, that
Hmm.
our guilt, feelings of guilt, can many of them are not from this life, and
Yes.
they are there in the collective unconscious because of mistakes and difficulties from other lives, and they can lead to fear. And we see this, Marcia, a lot in clinical work,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people that you can't explain why, they live in such fear. You can
Yeah.
see that the fear is in the basis of their neurotic patterns, or their
And it's paralyzing sometimes, right? It completely,
paralyzing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So what I wanted to use Malcolm as an
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
okay? I'm talking to you and imagining. I would love people to imagine. There was a scene where he goes to that scene is fantastic. He goes to the boy's house,
Yes.
and when the scene starts, he's talking to the mother. And I was so naive. I said, "Well, yeah, he's talking to the mother. Every child psychologist or psychiatrist at some point has to talk to the mother,
Yeah.
father, and
Yeah.
responsible adults." But spoiler alert, you already
Yeah.
gave all these spoilers to everybody else. But we never notice until you see the movie again that she's never looking at him. He's the only one that is talking. Isn't that great? And he's in his persona of, the great psychologist and all that. And then he's waiting actually for Cole. So then Cole goes with him, and the mother is talking only to Cole, but we think, okay, she's telling them to leave and everything else. But I think it's something real important that he was so protected by his persona. He was so
Hmm.
identified with his persona that he couldn't acknowledge what was in his shadow aspects. That was the fear of discovering that he was dead, in a
Yeah.
sense, and the guilt that he had been feeling previously to that. And if you guys remember, There is when he starts remembering things to help Cole. It was
Yeah.
actually the little boy was the psychologist,
Yes. Yes.
spiritual
And
psychologist.
it's quite, I don't know if the best word would be cathartic, but working with this little boy that so needed help, he, the child, actually unburdened the child psychologist, Malcolm, right, Dr. Malcolm, of his guilt, right, and of his past that he repressed, including the fact that he may not have been such a good husband after all, right?
I was going to say that. We
Yeah,
are
yeah.
really, yeah, I was going to say that. He may not have because he was so involved with his work and career, remember?
Yeah, yeah,
And he never told, and I'm not sure if he never told or he didn't, like he didn't tell enough his wife that he loved her,
yeah,
right? He wouldn't pay much attention to her, something like that. And also, Martin, remember that when he remembers in the end, or I think he was studying the case
yeah,
of a little boy that was similar to Cole's case.
yeah,
And then he puts in the tape recorder the session,
yeah,
and then he realized that he hadn't seen that before, that when he leaves the room, there was another person because he was alone with the little boy. There was another voice in the tape recorder. And I'm asking for forgiveness to people that speak in Spanish because my Spanish is not that good. But the spirit who was talking with the boy would say something, "Yo no quiero morir. I don't want to die," and was repeating that
yeah,
to the little boy. And the little boy, since Malcolm couldn't understand what was going on with that little boy, the little boy grew up unbalanced
yes.
and ends up killing Malcolm, right?
Yeah, he's the
So that
agent. Yeah, the agent to end that relationship with himself and with, in this case, Dr. Malcolm.
and
And
Dr. Malcolm, yeah,
yeah,
and it's really great because then he makes the connection. He has the insight
yeah,
that calls actually. Then I think he goes. I'm not sure in which part of the movie because then he goes to the hospital where Cole is
yeah.
because of the bullying situation, and he that sentence everybody nowadays it's in the culture, a
Yes.
Western culture, that he asked the boy what's going on, really going on, and he says, I see that people, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's the
Yes,
uh,
yes,
he wants him to, you are not going to trust me, and he said, no, I will trust you. And then he finally says, I see that people, the little boy.
hmm,
So I think this is very important because Malcolm, if we it's a good example of what Joanna is saying. He was feeling guilty, probably unconsciously,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
mostly his whole life, because he knew he couldn't in the unconscious.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing this job of trying to really listen to some of his patients, not that he
No matter how
hasn't.
good he was, right? No matter how he was received awards for his work, but his mission was to listen, but he didn't. He presented his own biases, right? And if I were to just say something that it stayed with me in watching this movie, is that how it is all about transforming, shadow work, right? The darkness within into light, transforming the pain that you carry into healing, or the trauma that we all bring into a sense of harmony, a sense of love. So I think that's why this is such an important movie. And even if we got all the spoilers, please do take a minute to watch it, because it's really worth it to look at it from many different angles, but especially to me, the angle of understanding the pain that actually is in every one of those characters, the wife, the husband, the child, the mother, everybody is going through some sort of pain.
Yes. Well, let's make some challenge to people that are listening to us. Actually, no, we didn't give all the spoilers. There are lots of,
Yeah,
and people when look at Sixth Sense again, and there's a wonderful scene in the church, inside the church,
yeah, yeah,
that I think it's very, because it's all about, it's like a psychotherapy,
yeah,
but I think it's very important also that it's a child, and well, and there's all the help of the little girl, the spirit
mm,
of the little girl. So a lot of things. But I think you said beautifully, Marcia, that it's all about transforming the shadow within us in light, because this is the process of
mm,
any good psychotherapy, but in a holistic
mhm,
point of view that joins psychology and spirituality.
yeah,
And I know we have not much time, but Joanna says that the path to grow is to confront our fears through
yeah,
self-awareness, spiritual practices, and psychological resilience.
yeah.
So I wanted to make here an experiment, let's say, with you and everybody else,
Yes.
because I knew we were going. This is one of my favorite movies. I also don't like horror movies, but this is not horror at all,
No,
because
no,
it's
it's not.
talking exactly what Joanna is saying is a path. It's a beautiful example as a path to grow and
Yeah,
self-awareness and spiritual practices, and also psychological practice, because everybody's kind of treating everybody
correct.
psychologically, learning together, right?
Hmm.
But previously, and then I'll say goodbye with that. In a synchronistic um, experimentation, let's say, I opened a small book by Joanna that when you open by chance, she has small sentences, okay? And this is moments of health, okay? So I think it's a beautiful kind of a small ending, because it's never ending, our search for ourselves and for the divine. But I'm quite sure she wanted me to tell all of you this sentence, because I was trying to connect to her, and I opened this little book by chance. And look at the message, okay? The divine consciousness irrigates me with peace. My misunderstandings are elucidated, and I calm down, considering the immense possibilities of balance that are within my reach. Before me, the present, elaborating the future. The past is the lessons learned, and the advantages of knowledge serving as a support for inner growth. I trust and renew myself, reassuring myself in the light. Isn't that beautiful?
That is truly, truly beautiful. And I just want to say thank you for leaving those words at the end of our conversation today. And if I were to just, wrap it up with the notion of the sixth sense, which is all about a story of a little boy that grew up and he was not healed, right? And it begins this saga, if you will, this story of damage, of surviving, but also the warning that is given to all of us. Let's take each other seriously, right? Let's listen, truly listen to one another so that you are able to achieve that lightness, that peace that Joanna talks to us. As I close our time today, I just want to say if this was the first time that you are here with us listening to our program, the Psychology and Spirituality, sorry, Weekly Talks, it is based on the works by Joanna de Angelis, and we're here to offer this, I would say, cool, right? This safe, this funny space that we can laugh and we can smile. We can also really go deep into some concepts and be able to expand spirituality concepts from this psychological point of view. So before we end, I just want to also say thank you for the organizations that are sponsoring this program. TV, Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AMI Brazil. And if you haven't done so, please take a moment to subscribe. And if you have any thoughts, any ideas, any questions, please do put them in the chat window. Would love to hear from you. With that, I want to say, Anahy, goodbye. See you next time.
Bye bye. Bye bye, Marcia. Bye bye, everybody.